Watchmen, Chapter 1, is a new animated movie made by DC slash Warner Brothers slash Paramount Pictures. And if you're not familiar with Watchmen, it's a very popular and well-known comic book story from the 80s written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Dave Gibson. So this is one of those comic books when a lot of older comic book fans talk comic books and things you should read and that are essential for comic book readers. This is something that usually comes up. It's regarded in high regard in the comic book world, or has been for a long time, as this very complex story that kind of changed the world of comic books and superheroes back in the 80s, along with other stories. Other comic book stories around that time that just kind of changed things from just kind of like loosey-goosey fun superhero stories into a little bit more serious storytelling. They were telling stories like that for a little bit, but this is really where they kind of became dark and kind of led into the dark, edgy 90s comics extreme era in a way. But if you're not familiar with the story, it follows several characters known as the Watchmen, who one of their members, called the Comedian, dies in the beginning of the book, and it becomes kind of like this noir story where Rorschach, who is this noir kind of superhero, investigates what's happening. He believes someone's going after all the superheroes, specifically their team, and trying to take them out. And he slowly unravels the mystery, and as this mystery unravels throughout the book, we also get glimpses to the past of these superheroes, and it informs us about this world and how it kind of came to be, because this kind of takes place in a semi-realistic world, and how these real-life heroes kind of affected and changed this world. Like in this world, the United States won the Vietnam War thanks to Dr. Manhattan, one of the only superheroes who actually has superpowers, or I believe he is the only superhero who has powers, who has almost godlike abilities. He goes to Vietnam and he wins the war, which gets Nixon reelected, which didn't happen in our world, so it kind of changes their world. It makes it different from our world. But the story is very much rooted in kind of like this noir story of what's going on. Why was the Comedian killed? Which is, like I said, that's the starting point of the story, which kind of sets everything into motion into our big final climax. So Chapter 1 obviously lets you know that this is only the first half of the story. It is split in half. I think where it ends, it's not a very good place to end the story, but I feel like it's a little bit of a cash grab. I like the movie. I thought it was well made. It's well animated. Even though I felt it could have been a little bit grittier. For whatever reason, when I think of Watchmen, I really think of kind of dark and gritty. Just not like violent dark, but like the world's kind of gross and falling apart and everything like that. And the animation looks fantastic, but it doesn't often get that across, in my opinion. But like I said, this movie is split in half. It's a good movie, but it has several flaws in that it kind of just ends halfway through, because like I said, I feel like it's kind of a cash grab. If you're, again, not familiar with Watchmen, and I know I should be talking more about the movie, Alan Moore was famously kind of screwed over by DC Comics. He wrote this comic book series. He originally wanted to use some original or pre-created characters, these charlatan comic book characters that DC had recently bought. They were old, like 70s and 60s comic book characters, I want to say. They bought these characters and he wanted to use them in this story, but they said no, because we just got these characters. You can't be killing them off and doing all kind of depraved stuff with them, because this is a dark story. It's a rated R movie, so if you don't know, it gets bloody, it gets violence, sex and whatnot in it. But he wanted to use these characters for his story, and DC said no, so he wrote this story, kind of just changed the characters into these new characters, and DC agreed that he would get the rights to the comics after they stopped printing it. So Alan Moore always expected to get these comic book rights back, and he would own Watchmen, the entire series, I don't know if it was him and Dave Gibson who would own the series, but I know it was specifically a sticking point for Alan Moore, who doesn't really associate himself with the comic very much, and a lot of comics in general, because the making comic books has often been bad towards older creators. It happens to newer creators too, but whatever. But they kept reprinting the comic, and they reprint the comic to this day. So essentially, Alan Moore is never going to get the rights to this comic book series back. And to throw dirt in his eyes, or lemon in his eyes, they've adapted it into a live action movie, which I actually like. This new animated movie, a motion comic. I think they had a video game, and they've also had spin-offs and prequels of the comic book series, which Alan Moore definitely doesn't like. So, like I said, I feel like this is just kind of a cash grab of a popular series, but I mean, saying that word, cash grab, what does that even mean? Everything's a cash grab. Of course they're making this movie to make money. They're not making it for the love of the art, so I guess what does it really matter? But anyway, I really kind of feel that term for this movie, because I don't really think it needed to be split in half. The movie could have been maybe 2.5 hours, definitely 3 hours, and they could have told the entire story in this one video instead of splitting it up. Because like I said, it kind of doesn't lend itself ending where it ended. It's just like, okay, I know where the story goes. I've seen the movie, I've read the comic, so it's not a huge deal. But if you're going into it, I don't know if you're going to be happy with the ending, because it's not like a big cliffhanger ending where it leaves you in suspense. You're just like, okay, like that happened. Some big thing, again, I don't want to spoil it right now, happens, and then you just it kind of ends, but it kind of ends flatly, because I don't think it's like a big thing. But anyway, it's a decent movie. I enjoyed it. Like, so the animation looks good. When I saw the trailers, I wasn't a fan of it. I kind of didn't like the voice acting and how it looked, but watching the movie, I actually really enjoyed it, and that it looked good. Again, I wish it was a little grittier, but it's well animated. I love the cell shade CGI kind of thing they went for. It does look fantastic, and the voice acting is good, and they do a good job adapting the story, which is a pretty straightforward adaptation for the most part. I mean, they changed a little bit of things around, they cut some things out, because obviously it's a movie and you gotta keep the pace going and make things a little bit more interesting, but it definitely works as a movie. Like I said, I give it a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. Good, fantastic movie. If you're a fan of the comic, you'll probably enjoy it. I don't know if you'll love it, but it's interesting to see the adaptation. I love animation, so it's one of the reasons I wanted to watch it, even though I've seen the movie and read the comics. It's like, we don't really need another straightforward adaptation, but I love animation, so I wanted to see what they did, and they kind of could have taken a little bit more advantage of the animation medium and done some cool, crazy things, but they wanted to be faithful towards the comic book and make it kind of look like the comic, which they do succeed in doing. So like I said, it is a good movie, and I do recommend it if you like the comic, or if you're interested in the comic, or if you just like superhero things in general. Definitely go check it out. It's rated R, so if you're young, or if you want to show it to your kids, be careful, check it out first. But let's get a little bit into spoilers. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So again, the movie's cut in half. It's only half a real story of the entire comic book run. It starts off with the comedian's death. A comedian is dead, and Rorschach stumbles upon the death of this guy, and through an investigation, he learns that he's the comedian, again, the superhero who they were kind of a team together back like several years ago, and they were outlawed due to this law by Nixon, which is funny because he utilized them several times, specifically in Vietnam, but whatever. They were outlaws, so Rorschach is kind of like this rogue vigilante who's wanted by the law, but he finds out the comedian is dead, and again he gets in his head that someone is out to kill him, because the comedian was very strong, and it wasn't just some random person who killed him. It was definitely someone trying to take him out. So he goes to warn the rest of the heroes, and we slowly meet them, and none of them really believe him, because Rorschach is kind of crazy at this point. He used to be a good guy who fought along these people, and wasn't super violent, but something happened in his past that kind of twisted him, and he's kind of like this crazy guy who lives on the street just fighting crime like all the time, and takes it to the extremes because of something that happened in his past, which we don't learn about until the second movie, so I'm not gonna go into it. But no one believes him. But as the movie goes on, more things happen. Doctor Manhattan, and I'm skipping a lot. You know, like I said, there's a lot of adaptations, so you can go check it out. I'm just hitting big points because I don't really want to talk about it all. Doctor Manhattan, like I said, the super powerful, almost godlike being, is tricked into leaving the planet because he's convinced that he's giving people around him cancer and killing them. So he kind of freaks out about them because people are like, "What are you doing? Why are you killing people? Why are you giving people cancer?" So he takes off, and then Ozymandias, another member of the Watchmen, were they called the Watchmen? Crime Busters? I don't know. I'm just gonna call them the Watchmen. Anyway, Ozymandias, the smartest person in the world, is almost assassinated, and so it leads more credence to Rorschach's theory that someone's trying to take out these soups because they got the comedian and essentially Dr. Manhattan and almost Ozymandias. And then the movie ends with Rorschach being captured by the police because he's framed for the murder of this ex-supervillain who he's been interrogating throughout the movie to get information. He is framed for killing him and he's captured by the police and arrested, and that's where the movie ends. And then it goes to the big details, like I said, making it seem real basic and barely talking about any of the characters, but that's kind of like what happens. Rorschach investigates things. People are almost assassinated. We get the backstories of some of these characters and their past, which, you know, lets us understand who they are and where they're coming from. But it's kind of basic, like just a pop story plot that I wanted to get out, you know, just if you're not super familiar with it, because I really do recommend you watch it. I'm not going to do it justice sitting here and explaining it. But anyway, that's where it ends. Like I said, it's not a super like, oh my gosh, I got to see what happens next. At least not to me, because I know what happens next. But I kind of wish it was just one movie versus two movies. I think that's the thing that really hurts it the most. If it was one complete movie, you get the whole entire story, and I probably just would have enjoyed it more. But overall, like I said, it's a good movie, and I do recommend it. I want to say it's one of the better DC animated movies, at least adaptation-wise. Didn't stray too far, try to make it unique. It does stand out from some of the other movies. So it's good. I definitely recommend you check it out. So if you watched it, did you love it, did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.